As Democrats grapple with their loss to Trump last month, senior editor at The Atlantic, Ron Brownstein, notes this in his latest piece, quote, "It was not as if voters were unaware of Trump's flaws. In the exit polls and the VoteCast survey, a majority of voters agreed that Trump was too extreme and would steer the U.S. toward authoritarianism. Yet, a decisive slice of voters who held these negative views about Trump voted for him anyway. So strong was their desire for change." Ron Brownstein, of course, is also a senior political analyst here at CNN, and he joins us now. Ron, good morning to you.
Good
Always
morning.
wonderful to see you.
Yeah.
So you spoke with the top four Harris advisors. They had also, done some postmortem interviews with Pod Save America. But your piece is fascinating. Can you help us understand kind of what you learned in these conversations about what they think went wrong and whose responsibility it is?
Yeah, look, Casey, I think as I've said to you before, to me, the most shocking thing about this election was how normal it was. I mean, Donald Trump is anything but a normal candidate. But if you look at the exit polls and VoteCast and the election results, it's pretty clear the voters essentially treated him as a normal candidate, in that when they were dissatisfied with the way things were going in the country, and they dissatisfied with the incumbent president, the natural hydraulics of American politics is that most voters turn to the out party. And that's what we saw. I mean, 70% of voters said the economy was in bad shape, and basically 70% of them voted for Donald Trump. I mean, the figure that I cited in my introduction to this was when Barack Obama won in 2008 to succeed an unpopular president from the other party, 62% of voters who said the country was basically on the wrong track voted for him. And in 2024, when Donald Trump won to succeed an unpopular president from the other party, 62% of voters who said the country was on the wrong track voted for him. I think that the biggest takeaway I had from my conversations, these exclusive interviews with the top people in the Harris campaign, was that they could never escape that core dynamic of American politics. I mean, when David Plouffe arrived, and I think he was a little more candid than everyone else because he had not also worked for Joe Biden, he described the situation as catastrophic in July. And the core of that catastrophe was the chasm between Biden's low approval, somewhere around 40%, and the rising retrospective approval of Trump's presidency, which ultimately in VoteCast reached 52% on Election Day. And basically, their argument is that no matter what tactics they tried, no matter what critics felt that they should have done that they didn't, they simply could not overcome that gulf between the share of voters who look back positively on what they got out of Trump and those who were disappointed in what they got out of Biden. There was simply no way to escape that shadow.
Well, and Ron, I mean, do you buy that? Because, I mean, one of the other things you write in this piece is that there does seem to be a consensus that really the lowest moment for Kamala Harris in the campaign was when she went on The View, and she didn't seem to have a good answer when she was asked directly, okay, people are unhappy with President Biden. What would you do differently from President Biden? Is there any thinking about how they might have handled that differently that could have influenced this outcome? And what do you buy their arguments or not?
Well, as I wrote, that was certainly the moment about which they were the most evasive and defensive. I mean, there are a lot of different things that Harris could have done differently on a tactical basis. I mean, she could have appeared on the Joe Rogan show. She could have certainly needed a better answer on what she would have done differently than Biden. She was guarded and probably, too scripted in her interactions with the media at the start. But she certainly aced her biggest moments on the campaign. I mean, the debate, the convention speech, the ellipse at the end generated a lot of enthusiasm in a party that was really down about its prospects. To me, the core reality here is that whatever she might have done differently or that Trump might have done differently, he hardly ran a perfect campaign with, floating island of garbage and I will protect them whether they want or not. The reality is, Casey, that every time an outgoing president has been this unpopular, his party has lost the White House. Whether he ran for re-election like Carter and Bush and Trump himself in 2020 or stepped aside, Truman 52, Bush in '08, LBJ in '68. Every time a president has faced this level of disapproval, his party has lost in the election to succeed him. So I think obviously in any campaign, there are things you could do differently and things you could do better. And that certainly was a low moment that they should have been better prepared for it. But it's hard to see how you could overcome these fundamentals, especially given the late date at which Biden stepped down. I thought it was interesting that David Plouffe said to me, the cardinal sin, that was his phrase, in all of this was Biden waiting so long to leave the race. If the process to replace him had started earlier, Plouffe argued they could have either found a candidate with less tied to the administration, or Harris would have been forced to define her independence more clearly. But at that point, the hole was simply too deep.
You know, I'm so glad you raised that, because that really was the piece that I was going to kind of center in on, because it does sound like in some ways your analysis would show that, you know, if Biden had declined to run at all and there had been an open primary, Democrats still might have found themselves in this situation. But I suppose the flip side of that may be that there would have been more opportunity for people to decide that maybe Biden wasn't so bad because he wasn't asking to be president again. I mean, do you think if Biden had declined to run, Democrats actually could have overcome some of this?
I don't, basically, I think the answer is no. I mean, I think given the history, it would have been ahistoric. Let's put it that way. I mean, there's just no precedent for a party holding the White House when the outgoing president is this unpopular, whether, as I said, whether he runs for re-election or not. And I believe those structural forces made this very difficult. You know, there was also, in my story, I quote a woman who runs a group, Jackie Payne, who runs a group that studies basically white women, who made, I thought, a really telling point when she said that once voters decided that they thought Trump was going to give them a better economy, many of them simply did not want to hear about the other potential aspects of his presidency that would cause them cognitive dissonance. And, as I point out in the story, with the help of the CNN polling unit, by the way, if you look at the exit polls, you really see this expressed, like the shard of the results. It's almost like you're in an archaeological dig and you're kind of, dusting off the different shards. To me, the core of the matter, the heart of the matter, is that 36% of voters, that's a lot of people, were both pro-choice and negative on the economy. And they broke for Trump. More of them voted for Trump than for Harris among non-college white women who, as usual, were critical in deciding Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin, which decided the race. 40% of them were pro-choice but negative on the economy. It was strength against strength. They were attracted to the strongest argument of each side. They voted 2-1 for Trump. And that, I think, is really how we got this result above all. For too many voters living paycheck to paycheck, inflation, and in some cases immigration and crime, trumped democracy and abortion. And I think, I'm not sure, it might have been a little better with someone else, but I don't think there was any way around that core dynamic.
Yeah, really interesting. All right, Ron Brownstein for us this morning. Ron, always grateful to have you. Thank you so much for being here.